What's going on, everybody? Today I want to show you all my favorite champion of 2023 so far, which is Shocker. This dude is super simple to play, so I'm going to give a quick rundown of his abilities. We'll talk about some pros and cons, and then I want to show some advanced philosophies about this guy. I don't want to say advanced techniques because they're all very easy to do. It's just, you can kind of change your mindset about how fights work in MCOC while playing this guy. So let me explain his abilities first. He's got two icons under his health bar right now. There's some charges building up on the left. Those go up on light and medium attacks and also special ones. And then the icon on the right, that number 1 icon, that never changes to a number 2 or anything. That's just his awaken ability, which says that the first special one you do is going to be free. So watch this. That costs no power. And that gives some charges. So now I could do that again. This time it did cost power. That number 1 icon will never show back up at all. So again, regular light and medium attacks will give you the charges along with special ones. You cap out at those charges at 100. And then the way to use those charges comes mostly through the special 2. Watch this. Use the special 2 here. It's going to stun the opponent. It's also going to place a physical vulnerability passive on them. And now I'm going to hold heavy attack to consume all these charges and boom, hit him with a massive heavy attack. So that was a heavy attack for 161,000 damage. It could go higher. But for the most part, you don't really need to go higher because, I mean, look how much damage I dealt to this guy. It wasn't enough to kill Winter Soldier, but in an average battleground setting, that was, 230,000 damage in total that Winter Soldier's missing right now just from doing a few special ones, special 2, heavy attack. For the most part, that's it. You're going to knock out the opponent. But let me show you, in case you need a bit more damage, what you can do. So for this example, we're going to go to a special 3. And the special 3, it's going to do 2 different things. Number 1, like I said, you usually cap out at 100 charges. And by the way, as we get there, I might as well just dump this special one now. Don't really need to hold it. I am actually going to wait just a little bit more here. Do one more combo. Land in with a special one, but there's no real reason to wait. Then I'm going to go ahead and build to that special 3. And like I said, special 3, it does 2 different things. First off, it will increase the cap to 150. And it will also give an energized passive that doubles my combat power rate, which means I gain almost a bar of power after a 5-hit combo every single time. Watch this. That's a 5-hit combo. I have almost a bar of power right now. So that energize, it lasts indefinitely. The only time it goes away is if you reach 2 bars of power. So you use that as a way to quickly build special ones. And each time you special 1, you gain 25 charges. So that gets us up to the 150 cap very quickly. And now, if I do one more 5-hit combo into special 2 here, of course, you have to throw your special there, Winter Soldier. Come on, man. I'm trying to make a video here. Anyway, we hit him with a special 2. This is once again going to stun him and place a physical vulnerability passive. So I'm going to wind up a heavy attack right now. And this is going to hurt a little bit, Winter Soldier. So boom, does 241,000 damage. And then that's a bug. What I did just there, that's the second heavy attack that dealt a very similar amount of damage. That was actually a bug. I wanted to show it just in case you see it somewhere else and maybe it's not explained that's a bug. I mean, I believe it's a bug at least. I don't know. I haven't heard exactly what the devs think about it, but there's no chance that was intended. Let's rewind here a little bit. Go to the instant replay. So once again, we pop the special 2. And now we're just winding up this heavy, which, dude, this is going to be pretty hype in like a battleground tournament or something, because this is going to hurt. This is going to deal a lot of damage. And then the second hit of the heavy attack, boom, 241,000 damage. And then again, I did a follow-up just to show this bug, but that was 206,000 damage. So you can't really expect that damage, but what you can expect is that 241,000 number every single time. You see, there's something very important about Shocker's abilities here. he has guaranteed critical hits while also not being able to crit. What? Well, let me explain. So this line here says Shocker cannot land critical hits, but all his attacks have armor penetration equal to his crit rating. So guaranteed critical hits and the inability to crit, they're basically the same thing if you think about it. What you're really doing is you're just removing the random element to it. You're removing any sort of luck factor. You're dealing a very expected amount of damage. There's some benefits to critting. There's a node, I think it's called Crit Me with Your Best Shot, where you have to land a critical hit in order to deal damage. Don't use Shocker in that situation, obviously. And then the other big benefit is that you also pierce the opponent's armor when you crit. But Shocker has that. He has armor penetration just built in. I tested this guy versus Doom. It reduces damage a little bit, but still, you hit with the heavy attacks for a massive amount of damage, plenty enough that he would still be an option for someone like Doom, who has the highest base armor in the game. So yeah, then there's also some benefits to not critting the opponent, and I would say there's more benefits to not critting than there are to critting. So, you know, champs that trigger certain effects when they're critically hit, the most notable is probably Mr. Sinister, who heals back that damage, but there's plenty of other little smaller effects that other champions gain, or something to do with a node where if you land a critical hit, something will happen, they'll go unstoppable, or whatever, right? So more often than not, it's a bigger benefit to not crit the opponent, but you still have that expected damage output. But is it really that big of a deal that we're getting yet another champion in this game that doesn't deal critical hits? What makes Shocker so special? Why wasn't I ranting and raving about other champs like Crossbones here? Well, first off, Crossbones, very powerful champion. I would never deny that. But there's a reason why this guy can't be used in as big of a variety of situations as someone like Shocker. First off, building his Furies and juggling, maintaining them because of the way that they expire, it's not that easy to do. Doable, for sure. But in some situations, it's very difficult to do. It's much easier against hashtag hero champions, but not every champion in this game is a hashtag hero. So, you know, Shocker, he has no benefits or drawbacks against certain groups of champions. Doesn't matter what hashtags they have. Not to mention, Crossbones is still reliant on RNG. You can see here, it's a crit hit replacement for Crossbones. So he still has his crit chance. And when he would crit, instead of dealing a critical hit, he just gains another Fury buff. So if the opponent has crit resistance, your damage is still going to be shut down, even though you would think it wouldn't work that way because he doesn't crit, right? Like, that's not how his damage comes out. But he technically still does. He still needs to be able to crit the opponent. Plus, he doesn't have armor penetration, so heavily armored opponents are still going to shut down Crossbones' damage output, even when he has many Fury buffs going for him. He'll do some damage, don't get me wrong, but he can still be shut down that way. Not to mention, these are Fury buffs. There are so many negative interaction with buffs in this game, like, I don't know, Mystic Dispersion for the entire Mystic class, or the Buffet node, the Spite node. Your buffs can be pilfered. There's so many drawbacks to buffs. There are a few positive effects to them as well, where sometimes you are going to need to use a champ like Crossbones, and that will work out splendidly. But, you know, I'm just trying to say it's very different than the way that Shocker works, where it's not difficult to build his charges. You can rely on those charges, and you don't have to be against certain hashtag of champs. None of that stuff. Well, what about other champs that kind of fit in that similar category, even in the same class type as Shocker? What about Guillotine 2099? We already know the drawbacks of this champ too. You have to build a high combo in order to get that damage payoff. Which, you know, in the hands of a skilled player is doable. And again, this is a very powerful champion. Some crazy videos out there of seeing, you know, Guillotine used in great effect. Even like 2-star guillotines soloing bosses on MSD and Happy McMuffin's channel and everything. Very powerful champ, but she doesn't really get used that much in something like Battlegrounds, where you got 2 minutes to do as much damage as possible, hopefully knocking out the opponent well before the 2-minute timer is up. Guillotine is not going to do that in most scenarios. She requires that time and build up in order to accomplish that kind of damage that you really want to see out of a champion. So again, some major drawback there. Actually, if we were to compare Shocker to any champion, I feel like the best comparison is Gambit. Where Gambit, he has this kind of damage build-up mechanic to him. Doesn't really expire until you want it to, at least. And you know, mostly you're going to use that massive damage to get a huge special too. Sometimes. This is where the whole not critting and guaranteed crits thing, it's kind of the easiest to see it, right? You are going to get that guaranteed damage out of Shocker every time, whereas Gambit here, you're only going to do that on the critical hits, which is like 1/3 of the time, and that's if the opponent is not using, you know, some sort of crit resistance, which, by the way, a lot of the skill champions have crit resistance. It's not exclusive to skill champs, but like, even if you're trying to use Gambit in like a class advantage sort of situation, your crit chance is likely going to be even lower than like a 1 in 3 chance with this guy. So imagine having that damage of Gambit every single time, and that is the benefit of the can't crit, but still taking away the RNG factor and equating it to something like a guaranteed crit of Shocker. Now, let me explain a little bit for situations that the opponent has a lot more health. In like a battleground setting or whatever, you don't need to go to a special 3. You really just want to do like a special 1 or a maybe 2 special 1s. And then a special 2. There might be a time where you even go 3 special 1s, but for the most part, you could just drop like 1 or 2 special 1s, and then do the special 2, and then wind up for a big heavy. But let me show you what you would do in a situation like against Winter Soldier here. So he has Shocker, that is, has like I said, a very expected amount of damage that you're going to deal. Each one of those charges actually like essentially doubles his attack, his base attack at least. Okay, so it doesn't just keep doubling and doubling, but he gains you know, his base attack is 3460 at a 6-star rank 4, and each charge increases attack by 3460. So even in a situation where you're at like a class disadvantage or something, let me pause it real quick now that I've used the special 3. Even in a situation where you're at like a class disadvantage, at full charges, you're still going to deal 240,000 damage. It just fluctuates very minorly by like a few hundred, because all that's affected in class advantage or disadvantage is your base attack, not your boosted attack. Right? So if you have 150 charges, it's like multiplying your attack by 150. If you're at a class advantage, it's like multiplying your attack by 150.2. I think it's 20% that you gain, right? So like it's very insignificant, the like up and down attack increases that way. Same thing for Masteries, which is why this guy is not dependent on running recoil masteries. You don't need liquid courage, double edge, recoil, none of that stuff. It's not going to affect his damage output really. So most things in this game only affect your base attack, so you have like this guaranteed damage output. Now, knowing that we're going to deal 241,000 damage to Winter Soldier, that's roughly 44% of his health that we're going to deal in that situation. So what I want to do is, before consuming all of my charges, I just want to consume some of those charges. So you actually don't need to do the special 2 in order to deal massive damage. What you can do is just parry stun and do a heavy attack, and that was a 25k heavy. You know, let's charge in here, let's wind up this heavy attack, and boom, this is a 47,000 damage heavy because we're able to hold it a little bit longer. We just keep gaining these charges from special 1s with this energized passive, so we get to use special 1s all the time. They charge up so quickly, and then boom, 64,000 heavy attack for consuming some of the charges, right? Because it's just a damage increase based on the number of charges that you're consuming. That's all it is. So let's keep spamming special ones. And we'll go in here and do another heavy attack. And boom, there's another, 42,000 damage. And at this point, we're getting very close to that, that threshold where we're going to kill him. We're actually there right now. So I need to get, a few more charges, whatever. Now I'm going to do, another combo here. You can see we're stunning the crap out of this guy as well. Because you have a stun chance based on your charges that you're storing. And now I know for a fact that this will kill Winter Soldier. There's no guesswork here. He is below the threshold of which I need him to be. Boom. He's done. So I would say he's, Shocker is probably not the ideal champ to be using in a situation where the opponents have such inflated health, like, any of the Realm of Legends, Labyrinth of Legends, Abyss of Legends, any of those areas of the game. Probably not the most ideal champ to, to use this guy in. Not terrible either, but still, he's more of that champion where if they have a reasonable health pool, like up against, someone in Battlegrounds, the exact amount of damage that you can deal with this guy, or at least if you're not like a supercomputer going on up here, you know roughly how much damage you're going to deal. If I dealt 240,000 damage with 150 charges, well, 50 charges, basically like every 50 charges is about 80,000 damage. Give or take slightly, but it's like about 80,000 damage for each of the 50 charges that I'm using. That's kind of what you can expect. So in a longer fight, stay in that limbo area of just using special 1 and heavy attacks while you have that increased power. Again, the increased power goes away if you ever hit a special 2. Just special 2 like power range. And then finish the fight with a special 2. But because most health pools are lower, you're not going to have to do that. You just special 1, special 2. And that's it. You're out of the fight. Just to show what I'm talking about with a class disadvantage, that his expected damage output doesn't really change. I'm gonna go ahead and quickly get to 150 charges here. Let's speed it up a little bit. Okay, I've just popped the special 3. So now let's slow things back down a little bit. I'm just going to pop a bunch of special 1s here. You could see that she is stunned for a lot of this as well. I'll get to the benefits of that in just a minute. But, man, we're just firing these special 1s back to back to back. Now I'm at 150 charges. And how much damage is this going to do? Well, again, against Winter Soldier, it was 241,000 damage. And the number is going to change slightly because, hey, my attack did change. But let's consume all of these charges right now. And you're going to see roughly 241k. 240k. Okay, so we lost a tiny little bit there. But it's so insignificant that it really doesn't matter. Like, you still have this very expected damage output. Now, if you really want to kick things up a notch, take things to the next level with Shocker, you could invest in some masteries that benefit him and some of your other champions, sort of. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine. He needs nothing. He requires absolutely nothing. He doesn't require any of the crit masteries. He definitely doesn't require any of the insignificant attack increases of Glass Cannon. The insignificant, for Shocker at least, damage increase of Double Edge or Liquid Courage. None of this stuff. You don't need Assassin. You don't need willpower for anything. You could get by with absolutely nothing. You don't even need Limber. You better still have Parry and Dexterity, but that's it. But what you can pick up if you want is Petrify. So Petrify decreases the opponent's power gain and healing, but healing doesn't really matter so much. If the opponent heals, who cares? Because you're going to knock him out flat with a special 2 into heavy attack anyway. But if you have the Petrify here, you're going to reduce their power gain by 30% for a lot of the time. You can see how frequently we were stunning the opponent there. If you really want to as well, you could also pick up Collar Tech, which at 5 points will reduce the opponent's power by an additional 18%. So 30% from Petrify, 18% from Collar Tech. You could really speed up fights and not have to bait many specials at all. if you have those two things working for you. But because they're a little bit more niche and they wouldn't affect all of your champions in all the situations, I probably still wouldn't run them, but it's something if you want to, you could. So let's talk a little bit more about pros and cons for Shocker. The biggest pro is just what I've been demonstrating, is that you know how much damage you are going to deal. You're not relying on any sort of luck factor. The opponent, for the most part, is not going to be able to stop that damage that you're dealing. If they are stun immune, that's going to be an issue, but even like the opponent's Limber Mastery, it's not going to affect the passive stun of the special 2. So even in most situations, you're going to be able to stun them with that special 2 and get those heavy attacks in. It's going to be very hard to stop that sort of damage output. Again, there will be situations where he's not ideal, but you could say the same thing about every champion in the game. Some of the other pros is that he does have a little bit of utility here, which is he's immune to all shock effects, whether it's debuffs or passives. He's immune to concussion debuffs, not passive, but concussion debuffs. And you also reduce the duration of incoming stuns by 50%. However, if the opponent has Limber Mastery active, it is removed. So that's what I meant by you don't even need the Limber Mastery. He has built-in Limber Mastery, essentially. He doesn't have a whole lot else for utility, though, which is, I would say, is one of the major cons to this champion, is that his Awaken ability provides a little bit in saying whenever Shocker is stunned or the opponent gains prowess, you gain some of those charges. So if you're up against, it's kind of a little class advantage sort of thing. If you're up against mutants that typically are the ones gaining prowess, not exclusively, but usually, you'll gain your charges a bit faster. And then defensively, if you end up getting, if you put him on defense and he's getting stunned, he's also going to be building up those charges, which will help his, his defensive abilities here as well, where he can go unblockable at 50 plus charges, which sounds very scary. But you can also remove those charges from the opponent if you intercept while Shocker is unblockable. If you just, intercept them there, you're gonna take away 50 of his charges. So it's not the biggest deal. Also, Shocker's damage output, it's not the highest, just off of his base hits. It's mostly his heavy attack that is the threat. So if you do slip up on an intercept and he hits you with that unblockable, he's going to consume some of his charges in doing so, and you're probably not going to take that much damage. You can, however, get pretty unlucky because his medium attacks also have a chance to stun. It caps out at a 25% chance to stun on mediums, but hey man, we've all seen how sometimes you could just get unlucky there, and if you get hit by him while you're trying to fight him, yeah, he could actually roll a few different stuns back to back because there's no internal cooldown on that. He could chain those medium stuns. So there's that. And then there's also another thing here, which is auto block. It's at 50 charges. If Shocker will be struck by a special attack, he consumes 25 charges to auto block. So he's going to slow people down that way by auto blocking their specials. It's also kind of a nice safety net when playing the champ offensively, especially if you're doing that thing I was talking about where you use a special 3 and you're kind of bouncing back and forth between special 1 and heavies, because you're typically going to have more than 50 charges always that way, while dealing pretty decent damage with your heavy attacks in the range of 45-ish thousand damage, give or take. So that's kind of ends his utility and defensive capabilities, though, which I'm putting that as the major con for the champ. I consider this an amazing battleground champion because you know exactly what you need to do to get through a fight. You know when you can just flat out knock out the opponent and end things, and it doesn't take that much effort. It's just do a special 1 to build up 25 charges each time, gain some charges as you go from light and medium attacks, and then unleash them all with a big special 2 that you also, heavy attack afterwards. And you knock them out. So I consider him a mostly offensive battlegrounds style champ that can be used elsewhere in the game. I guess the other biggest utility that I did talk about a little bit, but I should once again reiterate and add to his pro list is that, again, there's champions, there's nodes, there's effects where if you land critical hits, it's going to put you in harm's way. It's going to put you in danger. Whereas having the inability to crit, you gain all the benefits of a guaranteed crit without any of the downsides. So that is a major piece of utility as well. That will come in handy in certain questing situations too. But yeah, that's kind of my summary here about Shocker. There's a couple of things to note as well. There's two major bugs that I'm aware of with this guy, where one is if you do, your big wind up into heavy attack after a special 2, you deal that massive damage. If you heavy attack right away while they're still stunned, you also do the massive damage, and I don't think that's intended. And then also if you heavy attack into your special 3, it carries over all of that additional attack that you have. And because at 150 charges, you can gain over 500,000 attack, it is a stupid amount of damage, even if you don't have all your charges. It is an absolutely stupid amount of damage that you can deal, carrying that into a massive special 3. And I don't think that was intended. So I would be weary if you're interested in trying to pick up Shocker or invest Catalyst in them. I'd be weary of those two bugs. They're probably not intended and will probably be fixed quite soon. So yeah, that's all my thoughts about this guy, though. Favorite champ of 2023 so far. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.